Hi, my name is Kelly Chinsky, and I'm here today to talk to you about Recap, the Recap app. I am going to wait a couple minutes to see if anybody logs on. Okay, so we're going to get started. I'm going to talk to you about the Recap app, and I'm going to talk about how it has been helpful and useful in my classroom with instruction and assessing students. I'm going to do a screen share here, and I'm going to start off by showing you a quick little video about Recap itself for those of you that have not seen Recap before.
Recap is a free teacher app developed by the makers of Swiggle that brings the benefits of frequent video self-reflection to every student, giving teachers and parents insights into students' learning process. To create an account, I'll go to letsrecap.com and select to sign in as a teacher. Once I input my name and information, I'm taken to my dashboard. On my Recap dashboard, I can start setting up my classes. When I add a new class, I have two options for how my students will sign in. I can either use a 7-digit class PIN, which is great for shared devices and younger students who can't remember their email address and password, or I can choose to have my students create accounts with their email addresses so that they can log in privately to record and review their content. For this class, I'll use the class PIN option and input my students' names. Now that my class is set up, I can go in and add an assignment. I can add one or more questions and can choose to add them as text or record a video question. Once I've set up my questions, I can choose how much time my students will have to respond, which students will receive the assignment, and pick a due date. Once I have sent it out to my class, my students can access the assignment by going to letsrecap.com on a laptop or Chromebook, or by using the Recap iPad app. My students will log in by entering the class PIN and clicking on their name. Students will use their webcam and microphone to record a video response to my questions. After recording, they can review their responses before submitting them, re-record if they choose, and assess their understanding of the topic. Now that some of my students have recorded their responses, I can go in and review what they've submitted, either one by one or all at once. I can also view a daily review reel, a sample of highlights from my students' responses.
Okay, so that was a little quick video on Recap. And I want to share with you the process of getting onto Recap. So there are a couple ways. You can go to Google and you can type in Recap. It's as easy as that. Now, when you get onto there, actually the webpage letsrecap.com, but you can simply just type in Recap and you'll go to Recap. And here you would sign up for Recap. Now, when I'm clicking on sign up, I already have a Recap app, and so it's going to continue to pull me back in on here. But when you sign up, you'll sign up, and when you put your name in and your information, you'll pull up to a home page that looks quite like this. You're signing in as a teacher. It will give you two options to sign in as a teacher or as a student. You want your teacher view on the desktop. You'll come into the side. This is my class, Ms. Shinsky's class. But you would add a class, and you will put your class name. If you have you're departmentalized, you can put in your class here, and you can type in, you can specify, I know for like high schools and middle schools and things like that, you could add more than one class, multiple classes. And you will decide whether you want to have them have an email pin to get in or a class pin. So what this means is if you click on here for them to have email or a Google account, each time a student gets in, they will actually have to enter their email. So this is recommended for higher grade levels or older students. I have class pin. The whole class would have the same exact pin to enter in. The reason I do this is because it's a lot easier. We have a pin. We put it up on the board and everyone knows how to get on when they're on their own device. The only disadvantage to this is that all the students can see everything of everybody else. But we kind of talked about privacy, and the conversations we have back and forth are only positive conversations, and anything they're putting on there is something that's going to be school appropriate anyways. And so we should not have any issues with that. So you would type in either an email to access or a class pin. Like I said, for I would assume elementary, most of us would just do a class pin. And so you would click on that, and then you would start adding in your students, and then you can add a class. So you would type in your students' names here. And this is how you would set up your class. Now, when you go into your class, what you will see, now mine has different recaps because this is my class, how we've been using it. On the side, it's pretty simple. It has the features. Here's where your class pin is. So you would click here. This part is kind of a little bit confusing because the first time I used it, I looked at this pin and I thought, oh my gosh, my second graders are going to have a hard time remembering this because it has no relevance to them. So then I clicked reset class pin and it gave me another one and another one. So it didn't give me the chance to actually type in my own that I thought that everybody would understand easily. And at this point, I cannot click reset because my kids already know this. But once you have this class pin, we put ours in our agenda. I typed up a little kind of like a handout for the parents knowing this is recap if they want to put it on their device at home. And this is a class pin. And unfortunately at this time, recap hasn't done any updates to where you can go in and choose your own pin. But this is where you'd find the class pin. Like I said, I just wrote it on a little piece of paper. I sent it home, and I also have it in my classroom. And the students are pretty good now knowing what the class pin is. And this is obviously the teacher feed. So this is what you'll see as a teacher. It'll be different than what the students see, and I'll show you that in a little bit. On here, this is where you add a recap. And so recap, it kind of sounds exactly what it is. You're recapping the learning of your understanding of whatever the teacher has assigned. So when you go in here and you click add recap, at the beginning when I was first using it, I left it on the dates, but then I realized when I went back to actually use it for assessments, use it for grades, the dates just became nothing. So I needed to erase this and actually put in the assignment. Like if there was a comprehension question, I would type in comprehension, and then I would put in what story it went with. So when it starts piling up and the students see them on there, they know exactly what it links to. So you specify on here what you want the title to be. And down here is when you add questions to it. So you would type in your question, and I was messing with recorded video, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when you click on record video, this is really helpful for lower grades, especially when you say, well, my students would have a hard time reading what the question is. So you would actually put in here and you would video yourself asking the questions, and the kids do not actually have to read it. Once you type in your question, you can add another question, you can add another question, you can add multiple questions, and then you would type next. Oh, I didn't put a title in. So you would assign this to your whole class, or you could assign it to particular students. And I always, this is maximum recording time per question, and this is on the student's end. How long would you want them to have to answer? I always put 2 minutes because this is kind of a buffer. We always allow our students more time for it. All of them are different. Sometimes it takes them a little bit more time. And so I always put it at the maximum time because I don't think it hurts anything. Due date. This is kind of, you know, you can figure out, in the beginning I put the next day, but then I realized that it takes more time for some students to come in and actually do the recap. And so I put about 2 to 3 days out for a time limit on when it needs to be completed by. And include the assess yourself poll, which should always be on because it's important to know the students to self-assess whether they got it, they partially got it, or didn't get it at all. In the beginning, really, you have to talk to the students a lot about what this means and talk about how you do not have to be ashamed if you did not get it. It's helpful for us to know whether you got it or not. And of course, in the beginning, all of them push, I got it. And then as time goes on and they really see that it's helpful, then they start being a little bit more honest with their answers, and you'll kind of get a little bit better of feedback. So I always would keep that poll on. When you hit send here, you actually send this recap. And I have a lot of students at home that have it on their iPads and devices, so they're going to think this is funny when they see it. And And then it shows you activity. So it'll show you the students that have completed the recap. And on the side here, I can actually delete this since this is my live page. So this is a recap that I created today before they left. And there's a lot of different ways to use recap. So once you actually get on and you sign in and you create your own recap account, and then it's what do I do with it? And there are multiple things you can do within class. Obviously, the first thing is to use it for assessing students in all content areas. Then you can kind of extend a little further. And in my class, what we do is we do not do homework per se. We have what's called conversational homework. And so students only have things that they have conversations at home, or there might be a little questions they answer either on Seesaw or on Recap or on Remind if I send a text. So this, we've been learning about shapes, and we're beginning our shapes unit. And so we talked a little bit about shapes today, and they all said, we want to recap, because like I said, a lot of them love to go home and do them. And so I told them this is titled Shapes Around My Home. So what they'll do is if I clicked in, got in here, you would see the recap I created was that students are going to use their devices to walk around their home, kind of like they're videoing like cribs. And they're going to identify different shapes within their environment at home or outside, or I told them at daycare, anywhere they're out and about after school. And then they're going to identify the shape and attributes we've talked about. For example, maybe how many sides, how many vertices, that type of thing. And so when it comes back to me tomorrow, my expectations aren't that all of the kids have them completed. If they didn't have them completed at home, then I have the devices at school that they can catch up on. And so just kind of understanding that not all of them are going to have these devices, not all of them can do this at home, but the ones that want to have that chance to do that, and the ones that do not will do it at school. They like to take the devices outside. If they're responsible with them, they can use it during recess to finish this activity. And they would just video, and they have a lot of fun with it. And so when students get home today and start finishing this recap, it'll start pulling up an activity here. This is a titled Ants video. And what had happened here was we've been working on ants in the InStec unit in science. And this weekend I had seen, we have been talking about ants, and the students didn't understand how ants actually ate other insects. They were flabbergasted. And so I had seen on my porch an ant, a bunch of ants, and they were eating and bringing back to their colony what we suspected. I think it was a crane fly. And so I took a video of it and I put it on Seesaw, and I asked the students if they wanted to get on recap to explain to me what they saw. And so you can see some of the students, they did not do it over the weekend, which is absolutely fine. And so there's the background of the class. When they came today, they saw the video again, and then they did their recap. And then there are other students, let me see if I can, that actually did it at home. So it tells me 10 out of 22 completed this so far. And this student, you can see, I wanted to say before I show these, all my students are acceptable to be viewed here on live. But this little girl, you can see, what are the ants doing in my video on Seesaw? And so she's at her house and she's explaining to us what she saw the ants doing.
Ants were getting the food to feed all the larvae and to feed the queen. I think that
And this was my second question here.
will travel either to another house to get just a little bit more food, or to leave the pile to give the food to the larvae and the queen.
And so I can see here that checking for understanding, that she really understood when we were talking about ants and their jobs and worker ants and that kind of thing. Down here too, I wanted to mention that the kind of the difficult part that I've learned with recap is that students can comment. When you comment on here, it doesn't actually like pull. If I was to comment on right now, it would say her name on there. And so you have to kind of put your name out to the side. If I was to comment on here and I said, great job, and I would put out here, Miss Chinsky. And so then I would add this comment on here. It actually pulls at me because I'm on mine. But if the students are on, it doesn't pull up just themselves. It's kind of hard to explain. And then you can comment back and forth between one another. With the comments, we did have a couple of situations where students were talking and making comments. Oh, wow, that's funny. I can see this or that at your house. And they have, once we talk about, and I see those kinds of comments because they do not have to be approved before they get posted. We talk about courtesy and we talk about online, and when you respond to somebody, it needs to be educational. And so there have been a couple of times where they think it's funny and they want to respond to each other on silly things. Then we go back and we talk about etiquette and things like that. And so that is one obstacle you might have until they do get something. I can go back and I can delete comments, but they will post on there as soon as another student. And they enjoy, I tell them, I try to encourage them to ask each other questions and then kind of go back and forth with that. But the comments is something in the beginning you might not even want to talk about until you get a little bit farther. Here is the assessment of how the students, whether they got the question or not. This is cool because it gives you a daily review, and it's kind of like a little reel of the different students and how they interpreted the questioning. And so once a week, I might pull one up and I'll play it, and the kids really, really love looking at the different videos. They put together a cute little...
I think the ants were getting the food to feed all the larvae and to be clean. I think they were eating enough. I think the ants were getting parts of it, going back home and feeding everybody in there because the ants in the colony are working hard too. And all the females outside in the wilderness are working hard to get food, and they need to get enough food to bring to get all the ants to have enough food for everyone. So they were getting food for their home.
So you can get the gist of what that is. And the students love seeing themselves on video and having all the different approaches. And I would suggest doing this after the assignment's been complete so that students have the chance to really say what they feel. Sometimes they can alter how they're going to respond if you play it before. And going through here, and this is Old Cricket, this is a comprehension question. These are 13% of the students partially got it. They had some trouble, and I was able to hone in, and then I can pull them aside and ask them, at what point did you have a little bit of doubt about the questions, or what questioning was a little bit too hard for you, that type of thing. And I know that when I talked to them about some of these questions, the question...
Old Cricket's plan the whole time was his back was broken, his leg was broken, and his neck was broken. If a bird was chasing me, I would run into the house and I would lock the doors.
This when I had asked a couple of students what their troubles were, what they had trouble with on this question, what was the turning point in the story? So I knew it was time for me to go back and kind of talk about how we can identify the turning point within the story. What does that mean? And so this is a question that a lot of students struggled with when I had posted this. And so I was able to see quickly and assess if the students were able to comprehend the story that they read and if they understood the level of questioning that I put in here.
Turning point in the story was that he actually broke everything.
And then you can see here again, 20 out of 22 have completed this assignment. And here's the reel again. On the side here, you can share these responses. It's a little bit more difficult to share on here because you actually have to put in a parent's email address and it can email it to them. I wish that they had, you can get a web link, but I wish that they had a button here, it's Tweet, that you could share it on Seesaw or that you could share it in a different form. I know that we avidly use Seesaw here in our classroom. And so I know a lot of other people use it all the time. And it would be easier if I could link that on there, but at this moment, cannot. So students that want to share them with their parents, they type in their email address here, which I have for them if they need that. And here, these students, it tells me the percentage that these two students that did not get this question here going on. And then these are some more recaps. I was trying to see which recap. I tested one out with my actual video. A video of myself. I don't know if it disappeared.
All Cricket's plan the whole time was to learn.
I guess it doesn't show. I'm going to show you the student's view because one of these was video. So this is my view of what I see. And then I'm going to sign in here as a student. So this is with ClassPin or with email, and this is a ClassPin. This is the view that the students would actually see when they sign in. And my students only sign in on the iPads because they need to have a camera to be able to answer these questions, unless at home they had a camera on their desktop. But in the classroom, we do not. And we have extra cameras within the school, but it becomes a problem because you have a lot of noise. And so if you had multiple cameras on the desktops in the back, then you would hear each other's responses and that kind of thing. It's easier for the students to just grab an iPad and be able to go to what we call like a recap spot. There's a couple of places in the hallway that we have that they can sit and they can answer, so it's a little bit quieter, and then they can come back in the classroom. We have iPad trays just share with grade levels, and so you don't necessarily always have them. So you could think ahead of a time that you would want to put recaps in and have at least 5 devices available, because they kind of can go through them. It takes them maybe 2 minutes to answer these, and then they can pass them around. So here's my class. This is the view that the students would see. And because we logged on with a ClassPin, then they can see everybody's on here. And which for me, I think it's fine, because like I said, there's nothing that they should be hiding. And if they are responding to each other or they're looking back for understanding, then I'll be able to catch that. If they get on here and then they find their name, then they would go and look. I put them in, I think, in this order. I don't think it populates to put them. Yeah, it doesn't populate putting them back in ABC order. This was just how I typed them in at the time. And so they can click on their name, and it shows here that she has a pending recap and she can respond. Of course, I'm on as her right now, and so I don't want to click respond, because then it will allow her to respond and then it will not let her back in. And so I'm going to leave that for her to do, and it tells her shapes around my home. When she actually clicks on, then she'll see what I have written in there. I'll click on some of these that she's already responded on before, and you can see the different times that she was maybe at the house or at school, in the car. Here's one when she was doing her recap in the car. And
Well, Cricket's playing the whole time.
I was thinking it was going to show my video on here, but
Favorite color is.
I think the boy should save the ant. Ants is minding our business. It won't bite if you don't mess with it. I don't squish anything. And would you want to be squished? I would not squish anything because I love ants. I would do
and you can tell here that she was in the back of the classroom. It was a little bit harder to hear her. And so that talking about a nice, quieter place. And I don't know why it's not showing the video.
What I found most interesting about the St. Patrick's Day test was that when Patrick died, people all over the world said on March 17th it would be St. Patrick's Day because of what Patrick did. And it became St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I found most
It's very cute. And so you can see on the different recaps. Are there any questions anybody has so far? Stop for a second and see if anybody has any questions. Class options here, you can delete the class. If you do something that you need to go back, you can delete the class here. You can go in, you can always edit, and you can always add students. Why is it not? No, it's messing up. So when you actually create your account and sign up, then you'll sign back in here. And then here you would see your class again, and then everything would pop up. So I have one student that shapes around my home that went home and did hers.
So, I'm going to show you some shapes in my bedroom. So, my bunk bed, wait, let me get that for you. So, my bunk bed is kind of in a rectangular shape. So,
You can't see it? Okay. So this is the Recap app, and I'm just, I guess, was being reminded of the time. And if there aren't any other questions, it's really, really helpful. We love using it in class. And let me come back here. So we use it a lot in class, and we've been using it probably for about a month now. I was messing around with it for quite a bit, and so I wanted to make sure to get all the kinks and things out. We have had a couple of issues here and there with Recap, but now I feel like we just kind of work with them. And like I said, the students get on when you're on your actual iPad itself. On the school iPad, you have to go into the self-service area and you'll pull in Recap. It's already on all the iPads. You just have to sometimes reinstall it. And the Recap app, it looks, this is actually my class, but it has a little, oh, you can't see very well, but it's the little funny looking red guy. And then they'll click on that, and then they click on that they're a student. Ooh. And then they'll get on. But it's fun. The kids love it. It's a great tool for teachers. And as you can see, the kids are anxious to go home and show you their understanding of the things you are teaching them in school. So I hope it was helpful. And in the comments, you will have the code that you can type in for you to get your credit. And thank you. Have a good day.